Welcome to Craft School. We are going to have another class today that talks about making paper flowers and botanicals using this beautiful frosted paper. We're going to make paper roses today. We're going to have two versions. The first one is the rose, the very first rose that I designed, first flower I designed, which was for a wedding site about 5 years ago. You will find dozens of ideas of how to use this rose on our site. And again, we have it both in SVG cut file and a PDF printable. And then we're going to make this rose, which is a little bit more advanced, but look at the detail on this. And it looks like something that you could pick from your grandmother's garden. These are both made from the same paper. You could actually combine them in a bouquet or make them separate. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of variety to get you started on your rose making. For materials, you'll need this frosted paper. And I have chosen mine in a coral, and then the botanic for the green, and of course you can choose whatever color you'd like. I have a 3/4 inch ball, and this is for the large roses only, a 20 gauge floral wire, and floral tape. And then I've printed the PDFs of the templates. You can see there's one for the small rose and two for the larger rose, or you can also download the SVG cut file. For tools, you'll need your scissors. I have a wire cutter needle nose plier combo, and then my low temperature hot glue gun and my glue. I'll start with the smaller flower, and I've cut out all of the pieces. I have 3 of these small little teardrop shapes and then 4 of these other multi-petal shapes. I have this back which is going to be the sepal, and then 2 leaves. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is take my scissors. This is my little trick that I always use, and on the edge of my scissors, actually curl the paper. And you'll want to think of this as like curling your Christmas ribbon. And what's important on these petals is that you'll want to curl both edges of the corners so that you almost have this V shape, this upside down V shape. I see a lot of times people will do this and they'll just go straight like this versus this, and it's just not going to look the same. So make sure you get your little V shapes. See, even once that I've done this with one, I can always recurl it. That's what I love about paper. It's very malleable. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to figure out how much pressure that you want to apply to the paper. You don't want to rip it, and you don't want to get little ridges from your scissors. So as you can tell, I've been doing this a long time. So don't expect yourself to get it right off the bat. Give yourself some practice. Maybe take some scraps of paper and practice with that. Okay, now once that's done, I'll take my hot glue gun, and you can see these little tabs that are on each of the multi-petal pieces. Put a little bit of glue on that tab, and then I'll curl it around and overlap that onto the other edge, and it makes this pretty little cone. Time for the glasses. Okay. So that's the first one, and you can see how the sizes they get bigger and bigger. So this is a 3-petal, a 4-petal, and then we have 2 5-petals, which are about the same size. Although you can see this one is open a bit more. So this is how we want to lay them out. And then for our center, I'm going to take the wire and bend the tip. The reason why I'm bending the tip is that I want to give as much surface for the glue to stick on, and we don't want the flower to be sliding off the wire. So you can see I have a little loop there. This wire is really long. I'll cut it down. I'll use this piece for the leaf. I'll take my first petal and put some glue right along the edge and place the wire into that glue. And I think at this moment I don't have enough glue. We want to make sure that stays. I'm going to add a little bit more and then let that cool. And you can see how it's sort of off to one side. And then we're going to very gently curl that around almost into a cone shape. So you'll want it tight at the base and then flaring out at the top. You know, I'm going to flip this back in. You can see how I have a cone shape here. I'll put a little bit more glue just to keep it wrapped, and then with my finger I can roll that back out again. Then I'll take a second petal, put some glue right on the tip, and then place that, line it up with the first one. And I'll want to overlap this little piece that's flaring out. So I'm going to just wrap it around like this, and then with my fingers roll those back again. And then do the same with the third. Overlap it from the third petal, and then just kind of wrap that around. It might fold a little bit, that's okay. You want to get that nice and snug right at the base. And I promise you, once you get this part done, this is the hardest part of the flower, and the rest is a breeze. If you're making multiple flowers, you might even consider doing all of the centers at once so that you have them all done in a row, and then you can finish them up really quickly. Now here's where the fun starts. I'll start with the smallest 3 petal and just slide the wire right through the opening. Before I get to the top, add some glue at the base of the center and then slide it up. And you can look at the face and then kind of arrange it so that it looks as natural as possible. Since you're going from 2 petals to 3, you don't want your petals to stack up on top of each other. And it's a little tricky, you know, because we're moving from 3 to 4, then to 5, and so you will get a little bit of that stack. Now I'll do my 4 petal. Again, add the glue. And then slide that into place. That looks pretty good. And then the last one. And since I'm stacking 2 5s on top of each other, I can actually rotate the petals really easily to complete that flower. So I have this little spidery looking piece, and this is going to be my sepal that goes underneath the flower. I want to overlap this, so I'll place some glue on 2 of these little points and then overlap 2 points on top of it, so that again I create this little cone shape. So then I'll take my scissors and just lightly curl these back a little bit to get some shape. Slide that onto the wire. And this is a new thing that I just added to this flower. Since I've made many flowers since this first one, we really started to add a lot more detail with leaves and with the back of the flowers. So you will not see this on some of the older patterns, but I think it's a really nice touch. Add just a touch of glue on the base of this, and then slide that into place, and it's ready for some floral tape. Now I'm going to show you a trick with the floral tape. Sometimes it's really hard to get all the way up to the edge when we're starting to roll the flower tape down the wire. So what I like to do, I'm going to start about 1 inch down. It takes maybe a couple times around to get it to stick and activate it. And then I'll keep going, I would say maybe 4 or 5 inches, and then slide it up, and then just keep going. That way you don't have to get all crooked and funny in those little tight spots. So the last thing we have are the leaves. I've cut 2 of these leaves, and I want to fold them in half. I want the line to be pretty precise, so this is a trick I have. I'm going to place the blade of the scissors right onto the line of where I would want to score it, and then just press it into my fingers. And that gives me a really nice starting point to then fold the leaf. Then I'll take the edge of my scissors and give it some shape. All right. So an easy way to attach these leaves to the wire is to add some glue at the base of one of the leaves and then place the wire right into that pool of glue. Then I'm going to take my other leaf and lay it right on top at an angle. It still has a little bit of dimension. This seems to work really well when you add paper to paper with glue in between and wire. It holds pretty well, so I don't need to bend the wire, and that way I don't have that extra bulk. Same thing with this. I'm going to start my wrap down from the top, roll it down, and then just slide it into place. And at this point, you could actually just attach that to your stem, maybe bend it out a little bit, and then just wire it right onto your stem. So for the last 4 years, I have found that this rose has been a huge hit. It's easy to make, it's really pretty, and there's so much you can do with it. So it's a winner. I wanted to show you how to do it again. For my next rose, I wanted to create something that looked like you could pick it from your garden. It had that full bloom look. And this rose actually originated from this little tiny bud that we published a few months ago. You can go take a look at this. And I liked the way that the center looked, and I wanted to bring that into a full rose. So this is how we started it, and then we just added petals very similar to what we did in this rose. I'm going to start with my floral wire, and this is where the ball comes in handy. We're going to use that as the structure inside of that center. I'm going to push that wire all the way through the ball. There we go. I'm leaving about an inch coming out the outside, and then I'll bend that down the side. And the reason why I want to do this is because when I make this rose, I'll be pushing a lot, and I don't want the ball to pop off. It happened to me a few times when I was doing the prototypes. Then I've cut all of the patterns, and notice on your pattern it says to cut 2 of each set. So we're going to start with these small ones, and we're going to use ones without the slit. All I need to do is curl them with my scissors in this sort of U shape so that it looks like this. I'll curl all 6. Then I'm going to take these and stack them. I think one of the things about a garden rose, or about any rose, is that there's sort of this rotation of petals. So it's an overlap and overlap, and it makes a spiral. So how I will make my spiral is I'll overlap these petals. You can see about half of the first petal is overlapped with the second. And I'll put just a tiny bit of glue at the base, 1 dot. And I'll keep doing that until I have all 6 of them into this spiral. You can see it looks something like this. Then I'll wrap that around into a cone, and then with my fingers, because I need to hold it all at once, I'll add a bead of glue around about the center of the ball. And then tighten it up just enough so that it places on the ball. You can see a little bit of the ball coming out. And you'll want to hold that until it cools. You can do a little bit of kind of curling back if you want to, sort of peeling the edge of the top if you want to get a bit more shape, and then make sure those spirals actually show. And I'm going to add just a little bit at the base of this last piece to hold it in place. So for our next petals, same shape, but we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than curling them the same way, I'm actually going to curl out the top edges so it looks something like this, just slightly. You don't want a lot of curl, but just enough, because you want it to move away from the center. And you want each one to look a little different to give some variety. So I'm going to make sure that the curl goes downward, put some glue on one side, and then create a little bit of a cup. So you can see how it has sort of an S shape. You want it to curl out, not in, and do that to all 6 petals. I'm going to add some glue right into that base, and then lay that right underneath. my first set of petals and on the ball. We want to make sure and just hit the edge though, not all the way to the wire, so it looks something like this. One thing that you'll notice about this frosted paper is you might have to hold it a little bit while it cools because it tends to slide a little, and you know, those look pretty good, but a couple of them I had to re-glue. So I'll place some glue right at the base here, right on the edge, and then put them right underneath my first set of petals. You want it to come up fairly far, so you don't want to bury it too much. And we'll go ahead and spiral that just like we did the first one. I'll show you from behind so you can see what I'm doing. So there's 2, 3. So for my last piece, I'll add the glue onto the base and then overlap it like I had the others, but then tuck it underneath the first one so you get the full rotation. And once that's in place, just hold it until it cools. I'm going to turn it around and look at the face. You can see there's a really big gap here. So that's where I get a little creative and throw in some glue way down deep and then kind of press the petal towards the center. And I don't want to do that for every single one, just a few, because you want that variety. And when you pull one petal in, the other one will kind of move with it. So I'll do it on every other one in this case to see how that looks. So I finished the inside, and now we're ready to assemble the rest of the petals and add them. So we'll start with the smallest petals, and I have 2 sets, and you'll notice these little cut marks all the way around. What you want to do is flip one over and then rotate them so that you get the cut going into the cut, and then you just kind of flip that on top of each other, and that way you get a nice spiral. I can hold it up to the light to make for sure that everything looks pretty even. If not, you can slide it around pretty easily. Then pull up one of the petals and just add a little tiny bit of glue to the center so that you can keep it in place while you're curling all of your petals. Then I'll take my scissors, and just like the first rose, I'll go in and curl each of my petals into a nice V shape so it has this rose petal quality. And you'll notice that there is a hole right in the center. Go ahead and place your wire all the way through and then bring this up to the top. I'll add quite a bit of glue to the base here because I really want it to stick, and place it all the way up to the foam ball. While that's cooling, I'll start on my next one. It's the same thing. We're going to do this on all 3 where we rotate these petals, put the slit inside the slit so that we have a nice formation. That looks good. You can also line up your centers and make for sure that your holes come to the same place, which this one's not. There we go. Tack that in a couple places. So I'm going to go in and gently, one by one, add a little bit of glue to the base of each petal, and then press them into place so that they come up closer to this row of petals. You'll have to hold this in between so it doesn't pop out. And you want them to be a little bit ununiform so that it doesn't look too fake. You want it to be a bit random. So I can do 3 at one time. Hold them on the side. This is looking really pretty. So now I'm going to continue by curling the second set of spirals. Same idea. Now this one I want to make it a little less pointed on the top so that my V is really wide so you can see the angles. It's just slightly angled. So it looks like this. I'll slide that onto the wire, and I need to be able to see the hole still, right? So Someday I'll be wearing these all the time. Put some glue on the base and then slide it up to the top and hold that until it cools. While I'm holding it and letting it cool, I can pull off all of my little strings. And then I'll do the same thing and just add some glue down to the petal and press that up so that it has a bit more shape. I'm not going to do quite as much gluing on this set because I'm wanting the rose to actually start opening up and becoming pretty flat, but just a little bit because we're in a transition now and the next one will be quite flat. So these are the last set of petals and they're a bit bigger and harder to get in there and curl. So I'm going to kind of pull each petal apart as I go around. Another thing that I like to do when I'm making roses is sometimes I will use my fingers to kind of edge that curl a little bit further and get this nice little point, because you'll see this a lot on roses in the garden where they have that curl and then the point on the center of the petal. So I think that looks very natural and realistic. So I'm going to add that here just for fun. Then slide this on to our rose. We'll add the glue in the back. And then I'm going to rotate it so that these petals overlap perfectly. So we have kind of two and then one between, two, one between, two, one between. And since we're flat now, we don't really need to worry about gluing anything else. We just let that cool. And while that's cooling, I'm going to make the sepal. So this is cut out with a little tiny knob there, and you'll put some glue on that and then curl it around to create this cone. Whoops. Hold it while it's cooling. And then use your scissors to curl out these little tips. I'm going to add the glue to the top of the curl and you'll see why. Because when I slide it on, since we're pretty flat on the back, if you put glue on the center, it will not stick. But if you put it on the top of the round pieces, it'll stick right there to the rose. So I'm going to show you one more trick. Since we have this sort of odd transition from the paper to the wire, I have this extra piece here. And I'm going to go ahead and curl this at an angle because I'm going to make a spiral that will create sort of a tube. So I'm twisting this into a spiral. So it looks something like this. Add a little bit of glue to that flap to hold it into place. And then I'll slide that up. So I slid that right into my sepal, and with my tape, I think I got some glue on it. I can just connect the wire and the paper with the tape. I think this rose is a little long, I'll clip it off. And now we're ready to add some leaves. So these leaves actually have a score mark in them already, and I'll fold them right along that mark. One's larger than the other. Use my scissors to give them some shape. And then with that small piece of wire that I cut off the bottom, I'm going to actually add the glue onto the back side, place the wire, and then back to back, place the other leaf. And then cover that with floral tape. And once I've gone a couple inches, I'll go ahead and add that to my wire. I want it to stick out just enough so you can see it behind the flower head. And there you go. That's beautiful. So here we have two different roses, both made from the same paper. One is very simple to make and the other a little more advanced, but we always like a challenge, right? So if you enjoyed this, click the like button and make sure and subscribe to our channel to get more videos like this.